Welcome students, parents, staff, and friends of Augusta County to Connecting with Augusta County Schools. I'm Eric Bond, and I proudly serve as your division superintendent. Please join me throughout the year as we take a closer look at our outstanding division and how we strive to serve every child, every day. Welcome to Season 2 of Connecting with Augusta County Schools. My name is Eric Bond, and again, we welcome you to another season of our podcast. We're very fortunate today to have as our guest Mrs. Tina Kiracofe. Mrs. Kiracofe is a returning guest for us in Season 2, but she is our Assistant Superintendent for Instruction and Technology, and we also have Mr. Mike Howdyshell, who is our Director of Technology for Augusta County Schools. And kind of what we want to do today, obviously, we started our school year, as everyone knows, in our hybrid model, which means that we have some students that come to our schools in person 2 days a week. And then we have some students that chose 100% virtual learning. In both instances, distance learning or virtual learning is going to be required. And we all know that we've implemented some new technology and some new teaching methodologies and strategies to address our virtual learning. And so there's lots of questions about that. And we thought it would be a good idea today to bring in our leaders of our instruction and our technology to kind of just talk a little bit about what our methodology is and what our platforms are, and maybe get some information out there to our listeners that may answer some of the questions they may have. So that's the purpose of today's podcast. Mr. Howdyshell, we're going to start with you. We have just some guiding questions. If you maybe give us some responses and some ideas and some thoughts and maybe even some helpful hints for our families as we continue on with our hybrid model in Augusta County. So the big platform that we use, it's fairly new to a lot of us and a lot of our teachers, is what we're calling Canvas. Can you explain to our listeners a little bit about what Canvas is and why we chose it, and maybe some of the concerns that you're hearing and maybe some helpful tips and even some celebrations that we're having? So Canvas, tell us a little bit about it.
Sure, yeah. First off, I guess, the best way to explain it is that Canvas is a learning platform. It's a learning management system. So if you ever hear anybody say the letters LMS, that's what they're talking about, learning management system. And it's essentially a platform where teachers can teach. They provide instruction, they provide documents, classwork, resources. It's a place for the students to receive all that instruction, receive those documents, and then it's a place for parents to see what's going on in the classroom. That question you get all the time about, what did you do today in class? Well, that's where they would go. That's in Canvas. That's what they've been doing. So we're using that this year because it is an extremely robust system, a digital tool that is being supported by Virtual Virginia and by VISTI. And in fact, it's probably one of the largest digital tool implementations that the state's ever done. And we're very excited to be a part of it. We chose Canvas for our division because it does meet the instructional needs across K-12. It does give access to parents from a PC or laptop and an app that's available on the iPhone and Android. And then the other reason is that this gives us one system to support. Essentially, getting everyone on the same system allows us to focus on efficiency, and everyone is going to be a help desk person this year, and this allows everybody to be on the same page. So that's where we're at with Canvas.
So let me ask you this question. Obviously, prior to the COVID and prior to us going to our hybrid model, we've used some other platforms before, such as Google Classroom. And so tell us the advantages of Canvas over Google Classroom and kind of how that maybe have also played into our decision to go with Canvas.
Well, Google Classroom is great. I love Google Classroom. And in fact, using Canvas doesn't necessarily negate Google Classroom. We can still find ways to use it, kind of marry them together in some ways. But the platform itself is important because it's where parents can access a lot more information than they ever could in Google Classroom. It kind of opens it up to the community a little easier for them to see what's going on. In Google Classroom, the documents that you receive and the instructions and the kind of work happens all in one stream, which makes it nice and simple. However, it does not allow for the kind of nuance that a lot of instructors need, especially when they're using 1,000 different types of applications inside of the platform. Things like Edpuzzle and different types of video, and Canvas allows you to integrate all that inside of it a little easier.
Obviously, our hybrid plan is a huge plan. We're redesigning education as we've known it for over 200 years, and the virtual piece is huge, to say the least. So tell us a little bit about what some of the celebrations have been thus far, and maybe even tell us some of the challenges that we've had. And I guess this is a three-part question. Of those challenges, maybe some helpful hints or tips that you can give our parents and our students that may be listening.
Sure. I'll start with some celebrations. I think it's important to recognize how big of an implementation this is. Canvas is, especially with a division our size, when we're looking at over 10,000 students, over 7,000 parents, over 900 teachers, all of these people kind of come to one place, and this requires a bunch of implementation of data, how people get to what they need to get to. And most systems take, anywhere from 6 to 18 months to kind of prepare for implementing this kind of process. And COVID put us in this situation where we were forced to do this as quickly as possible. So what generally takes 6 to 18 months, we've been kind of focused on 6 to 18 weeks. And the idea that we have been able to start at all and get everybody in here, just for example, just getting all of the teachers in the right spot where they can see their students and see their classes, that's a huge deal. Being able to integrate with our student information system and have those kind of connections work so that people can log into the correct place, that's a huge thing to celebrate, because that is something that takes a lot longer than what we've been able to do. I guess, the other thing to recognize is that we're able to take a huge number of services that teachers have already been using. We mentioned Google Classroom before. There are all kinds of digital tools that can be baked inside of Canvas, and we've been able to kind of implement those as well. So I think, that's something to celebrate. There's so many intricate pieces coming together, and I've been extremely pleased with how fast we've been able to get things working.
Sure, and I think it goes without saying how appreciative I am of your efforts and Ms. Kirachofe's efforts, and more importantly, the efforts of our ITRTs and our teachers, and even our parents and students. They've worked extremely hard in the last 3 weeks, or even prior to the last 3 weeks, but the last 3 weeks that we've been actually in school. It's just been phenomenal to see the progress that we've made so far.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I don't want to really take any credit for myself. The ITRTs, the technicians, the folks in the SIS department, and the teachers and the students themselves, they have been the ones all coming together, meeting these challenges head on. And I've just been, trying to help connect the right people. And, I cannot tell you how pleased I am with the kind of work that the tech department has been doing.
Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. So it has been a challenge. There has been a lot of success. We have implemented this at warp speed, if you will, and we're very proud of that. And we know it gets better every day as I tour our buildings and talk to our teachers. And there are definitely some challenges, but it seems to be getting better every day as we get more accustomed to this platform. That being said, there are some challenges. So are there some resources that our parents and students can tap into for help, and or maybe some basic tips for help troubleshooting?
Yeah, we have essentially 4 different scenarios that we're working with. We've got our hybrid students and our 100% remote learners. Those are 2 groups. And in each of those groups, we have people that have full, adequate broadband access and people who do not have it. And each one of those quadrants essentially has its own challenges. It has its own solutions. And we've been trying to build what is the best approach for each type of group, whether you have someone who can come into the school on a weekly basis, whether or not you have internet at home. All those things mean different resources that are available to you. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to use all of our people, our technicians, our ITRTs, as kind of focal points where people can go to get the kind of help they need, because the biggest challenge is finding the right person for what you need. And we're still building that out as far as the exact place you can go for a resource. I know that we're looking at opening up hours for parents, technicians, and with ITRTs. We're looking at opening up a helpline, phone line that hopefully will be available soon. Essentially guiding all the people to the right resource is the most important step. And then having those resources ready is what's next. And I think, we've been trying to build it all at once, and we're getting there. But definitely our email system works well for reaching people. We can take phone calls. We've had hosted a couple parent nights at some of the schools. We have some resources available that are just online from various sites. And then we're, going to start offering scheduled time to meet with technicians and the ITRTs as well.
So, as you know, you mentioned earlier, one of the challenges that we have in Augusta County is that we have approximately about 30% of our students that do not have broadband or internet access. And so,
right,
those students that may have chosen 100% virtual in that situation, and or they may be an in-person student, but yet still do not have the internet access at home. What are some of the things that we can do and some of the things that maybe our parents can do to assist those students in their instruction?
Well, at the division level, we continue to work with the state in finding opportunities for adequate broadband access for our homes, for the families that do not have it at this point. We're going to continue those conversations, and anytime there are new opportunities, I'm going to make sure that the parents are aware of them. In the meantime, especially with people that do not have access at home, we're going to continue building our offline options. Essentially, what we've decided to do, knowing that I can't bring broadband internet to your home, I know that I can give you a Chromebook, and we can use that Chromebook as a digital backpack. We can put things on it that you can take to your home. Things like PDFs and videos and documents that you can work with. There's these things called offline extensions that allow you to work with these materials. These are baked into the Chromebook, and if we can find a way to get those kind of resources on the Chromebook, we can get them to your home. We're looking at using our network at the school as kind of a depot for people to come and collect these materials. We've tried to expand our network outside of the building so that you can go to a parking lot. There's maps online to show you where you can park, where students can bring their Chromebooks to connect with our network, and that's where they can download these resources. And then when they go home, they can have access to them there without having internet access.
Well, thank you, Mike. We appreciate your insight there. And we're going to pivot our conversation a little bit. We're all about instruction in Augusta County Schools. So, Ms. Kiracofe, again, welcome to Season 2. I'd like to pose a couple ideas and questions for you to talk to our listeners about a little bit. And we're going to stick with the theme of our hybrid model, our learning model, and our distance learners. So often we've used the word asynchronous, and when we're talking about our distance learning or our hybrid model or at-home learning. So can you kind of explain to our listeners a little bit what asynchronous is and why do we choose this methodology?
Sure. So asynchronous has become a daily word that we use, and before this year we probably didn't use it near as much. Asynchronous technically means not at the same time. So when we talk about asynchronous learning, we're saying that not all students are learning at the same time. So with the work being presented to students in Canvas, they have the choice of when they are working on their work. So if I'm an A-day student, I'm at home on Wednesdays and Fridays, I can be working on my homework either in the morning or in the afternoon, or even later in the evening when my parents are home and able to assist if I need some additional guidance. So asynchronous just means that not all students are learning at the same time, and the teacher is not necessarily online talking live. So one of the reasons that asynchronous is so important in Augusta County is we fully realize that not all of our families will have internet access in order to participate in synchronous learning. We also realize that times are difficult and many families are having to be flexible and work out their schedule for childcare, their work schedule, as well as being able to manage all the other things that we have to accomplish in our homes. So we wanted to provide that flexible learning opportunity to our families and not require students to be in front of a computer certain hours of the day. That may not work for all families.
So, Ms. Kiracofe, you and I have had the conversation numerous times before about the notion of our virtual learning or at-home learning. And I think maybe there's a misconception by some that our parents are responsible for homeschooling or teaching their students or their children. And that's certainly not the case, nor is that our goal, is it a vision for that to be the case? So what are some of the tips that you can give our families for facilitating learning and helping our parents help their students with their learning, and maybe some of the responsibilities of our students as being part of this process?
Sure. So one of the reasons for using Canvas is that it does allow us many opportunities to provide direct instruction by a teacher on that platform. So in many cases, those are videos that sometimes the teacher has created. Sometimes it's videos the teacher is using that have been created by other teachers. So it is our hope that students will be pretty independent when they're working through their modules. One big tip I would give all parents is to make sure that you are an observer in your student's Canvas class. There will be videos that you can find at our virtual learning website that will help you to know how to become an observer. You will need to pair with your student. So there are some steps for that. But once you've become an observer in your student's class, you can see everything that your student will see. And that just gives you the advantage of being able to look ahead, see when things are due, see what learning should be happening. I read a really good tip the other day online. It was actually from a teacher who is also a parent. And she said one of the things they do each evening before an at-home work day is they go over the expectations and they go over the work, and that way her student knows what it is he's supposed to work on when she's at work the next day and he's at home or in childcare working on his homework. So I thought that was a really good idea. Become an observer, and then each evening just have that discussion with your student, what it is they'll be working on the next day. If children are much younger, kindergarten, first grade, they may need some additional assistance and guidance to be able to read directions and to know what it is that they need to accomplish. I would say that many of our classroom teachers are practicing those routines and helping students to figure out how to be independent in using Canvas. There's also something called Immersive Reader in Canvas that can be used by the student, and the computer would read the information to the student. So I think becoming familiar with a lot of these technical tricks will make it easier for parents. We do not expect parents to sit down and work step by step with their students. If you have older students, I can almost assure you that your students would be independent with this work. If they are feigning the need for help, then you may need to ask them about that and see what it is they've done in the classroom. You may want to have a parent conference and talk to your teacher about, should my student be able to do this at home? We've had some situations where students have been able to do this work independently in the classroom. So we feel pretty confident they can do it at home as well.
So we've talked about this before as well, and I think some of the things that you mentioned earlier about students and their accountability for their own education and their own learning, and certainly some parental assistance is necessary, but they need to be accountable for that as well. This looks a lot different than it did last spring. Last spring, as you know, when we were forced to close due to the COVID and the pandemic, we were at that point doing continuity of learning. But this is much different. You know, we are now moving forward with instruction. We're moving forward with students earning credits for classes, so forth and so on. So I think what you say is very powerful. We do need to help our students set some routines at home. We do need to empower our students to be accountable for their own learning. And most importantly, too, we need to be able to communicate not only with our students and our parents, but our parents and our students to us about what supports they may need.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this really takes a big dose of self-discipline. I think all of us would agree that whenever we are given work to do, we do have to use a lot of self-discipline to say, this is when I'm going to sit down and work on it, and I'm going to accomplish this portion of it, then I'm going to take a break. So in some ways, students may be working a little more independently. It's definitely much more flexible than what they've been accustomed to during a normal school year, where when they're working at school, it's very timed out and everything is very routine. So this is very different, and I can see that students would need to have some routines put in place. Parents may need to reinforce that, and we definitely have to consider that. And all students are at different places in their ability to be independent. But I think it's something that we would expect our students to work toward, and they're very capable of it.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about, virtual learning and our 100% distance learning, but also in our hybrid model, we do have about 73% of our students that are coming to school in person. Now, granted, that 73% of our students are divided in half. Half of those students come on Tuesday, Thursday, and the other half come on Wednesday, Friday. And again, that's designed because of our mitigation strategies of social distancing. We can only have a certain amount of students in our buildings at one time and maintain that social distancing. That being said, we do have a responsibility for classroom teaching and learning while they're in our buildings. So again, that's a little bit of a different situation just because we have the on days where they're in person and then they're at home days. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and what that classroom experience may be and even that at home day may look like?
Sure. So the classroom experience, I would anticipate that the days that students are in school, they are going through their normal routines with having math, reading, history, science, specials or electives, depending on the grade level. The classes are smaller, but teachers are providing direct instruction, providing time for practice, being able to answer questions during that time. We are continuing to encourage teachers to find ways to allow students to interact safely while maintaining that social distance and all safety precautions. But it's really important for our students to have that opportunity for processing and collaborating throughout the day. They may also work some in Canvas during their school days. That right now is helping students to set the routine and to become familiar with the platform. On their at-home days, those are also considered instructional days. If students only attend half of the days, they will be attending about 90 days. We need to have more like 180 days of school. So those days off or out of school are just as important instructionally. So teachers will be providing activities and work for students to do. The work they do on their off days could involve watching videos, completing assignments, working on a project. So there's a variety of activities that they may be working on, and each teacher may have those at-home work days set up differently. While the students' classroom routines may look largely the same as they used to, it is very different for teachers. Teachers are dealing with having their A group in front of them Tuesdays and Thursdays, their B group is in front of them Wednesdays and Fridays, and then they are having to also find a way to communicate and help those students that have chosen virtual learning. So just like a teacher can't rush out of the classroom and answer the phone on an instructional day, they also sometimes can't stop what they're doing with kids in the classroom and answer emails or take phone calls. They will provide the answers and get the help that virtual students need, but we are just going to have to allow them to do that within the time that they have when they're not necessarily with other students. And I know everybody is frantically trying to make sure that students are completing the work and we're keeping up with instruction. We know that we need to provide that flexibility at home and some of that grace as well. So it's just something to keep in mind. The experience in the classroom is very different this year than it's ever been before.
So I can't stress this enough, and we've said this before, but there are lots of things that we need to have happen for our hybrid model to stay intact and continue to have our students come to school in person. But two of the things that we've stressed over and over again is we all stakeholders are going to have to be patient and we are going to have to be flexible. And if you think about it, we are basically reinventing education as we've known it for over 200 years. And the fact that we've done that now in a matter of 3 weeks of time is pretty remarkable. But it's not perfect, and we're not where we need to be yet. And so I can't stress enough for all stakeholders, I'm talking administrators, parents, teachers, students, all stakeholders, we have got to exercise patience and flexibility in order to continue to grow in this model. I can't stress enough, again, to the public and to people listening out there, the daunting task and the phenomenal job that our teachers have done balancing all this. Mm-hmm. One, they're working in a worldwide pandemic. Two, they're working with a new virtual learning platform that, again, as Mr. Howdyshell pointed out earlier, normally is a 6 to 18 month process, and they've pulled it off in basically 6 to 18 week process. They're balancing and loving their students that they have in person on their A day and their B day. They're balancing that with those students when they're at home on their off day. And then they're balancing their students that they have as 100% distance learners. So it is a daunting task that what our teachers and our administrators are going through right now. And I just ask that everyone please remain patient, remain flexible, and please understand how incredibly hard our teachers are working to spin so many plates at one time. I can't say it enough how appreciative I am of their professionalism, their dedication, and what they're doing every day for our students. Along those lines too, and I'd be remiss if I didn't continue to mention this, we have to continue our mitigation strategies as well. And that's probably one of the most important things that we can do right now to stay in our hybrid model. Not only do we have to continue to practice our mitigation strategies in the school, but we really need the whole community in Augusta County to be on board with us and to continue working with us and practicing mitigation strategies at home. Those include our daily screenings that we do in the morning. If you're not feeling well, you need to stay home that day. If you do come to school that day, or even in the communities, we have to practice our social distancing of 6 feet. We need to wear a mask. We need to wash our hands frequently. And if we continue those mitigation strategies, not only in our schools, but in our communities, I'm very optimistic that we can continue our in-person learning and keep our hybrid model intact. In closing in this episode, I would ask you again just to make sure we're being patient. We are going to get there. We are working tirelessly to make sure that we are learning this together and getting through this together. I feel positive that if we continue those efforts, then we're going to have a very successful year this year. Again, I'd like to thank our guest, Mr. Howdyshell, Ms. Kiracofe, for being with us this week, and I appreciate our listeners out there. And again, welcome to Season 2 of Connecting with Augusta County Schools. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to get updates on our latest episodes. Our episodes can always be found on Augusta County Schools' Facebook page and website.